Power Friendship, go! Okay, so I just finished the Star Guardian event. I finished the main story, all 5 parts, 15 parts in total. Basically finished the Guardian stories, although that's not important for what I'm about to talk about here. Today I'm going to initially review the entirety of the Star Guardian event, all the rewards and the delivery of the story with the visual novel system. And afterwards, towards the end of the video, I'm also going to be just reviewing the visual novel system that Riot's been doing for the last 3 years now, and how I feel about it and what I think they could do moving forward. I'm just gonna begin by saying that I think Riot should stop doing the visual novel system. I don't think they've done it well, and I'll explain a little bit later. For now, I'll briefly summarize how I feel about the event, and I don't want to waste too much of your time, so let's dive right into it. I don't think it was that good, to be honest. Yeah. No, but to explain my thought process a little bit more, let's rewind all the way back to before the event started. They announced that Star Guardian was going to be the big midsummer event of this year, and right off the bat, I did not have high expectations. So then Riot released a couple of stories on Universe, and Necrit said they were good, so I just thought to myself, alright, we'll wait and see. And the event released. I heard a couple people saying that, this might end on a dark note, and they're trying to pull off Madoka Magica with all the Star Guardians burning out to be monsters and stuff. And I was just fine, I guess. The whole story overall, I was like, meh throughout the thing. I wasn't emotionally invested or anything. The only interesting characters, in my opinion, were like Zoe, Syndra, and Morgana, and Fiddlesticks. Everyone else sort of are just there. The main driving force of the story is the relationship between Kai'Sa and Akali, and it doesn't work for me. I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't work. It feels a little bit dragged on for me. I don't think that it was handled very well. I think if Kai'Sa and Akali weren't on the same state for 4 chapters, that would make the 4th chapter feel a little bit more intense. But speaking of the 4th chapter, I won't go too much into spoilers. It wasn't very exciting, and that's how I feel about the story overall. And the supporting characters were non-existent. They really were just there to justify their existence in the universe, explaining why they have skins in the game, especially Quinn and Rel. Alright, let's not talk about those characters anymore. Every other Star Guardian, like Echo, Sona, Talia, and Neela, are just sort of there. Neela's there like prominently for 1 act, and then every other chapter she's just there to say something. They're not really there to serve a purpose. They're just there to be somebody that says some quirky lines, be some comic relief. The in-game event was fine. We got Ultimate Spellbook, whatever. The announcer pack really gets old over time. I'm so tired of losing a game and Ari just says as this announcer like, oh, shut up. We got fine rewards. We got Eternals again. We got an orb, some tokens. Thanks, Riot. But that sums up my thoughts about the event. It gave rewards. It had a story. It happened on other properties such as Wild Rift and Legends of Runeterra, and it was played by players. So now we can move on to discuss about the visual novel system Riot's been implementing for the last 3 years' events, and evaluating how they worked or how they didn't work. Riot has had varying successes with these visual novel events. Out of the 3 visual novel events, first being Spirit Blossom, second being the Sentinels of Light, and the third most recent one being Star Guardians, to me only one really succeeded, which was Spirit Blossom. So we'll start off with the worst one, which is Sentinels, in which I think the visual novel didn't fit, and the execution was also poor, where it really needed more than just a visual novel to properly flesh out its details. The other events had it better, where Star Guardian, I think, would fit well with the visual novel structure, but I think the execution is a little bit so-so. There's some good, there's some bad. And Spirit Blossom, I think, really fit well with the visual novel system, and it was also executed well, which resulted in a very enjoyable event. Moving back to Sentinels, the visual novel wasn't the main reason the entire event failed, obviously. They had many other problems, but the visual novel system was one of the many limitations that prevented it from being great. If you take a look at one of the fight scenes, you can barely understand what is going on. at one moment, like, you can only have Lucian's sprite just shaking, and like the text box says he's screaming, he's going, and the screen flashes white whenever he's firing, and that's not very descriptive, right? You can only do so much to describe how they're fighting, how the entire battle is playing out, and how the world surrounding them really is. With a different format, Riot really could have fleshed out many of these details. We did get an interpretation of the fight scene in that cinematic that Riot released towards the end of the event, but the Sentinels event was one where we sort of question which adaptation is the true canon adaptation, because throughout Wild Rift, throughout the comic and PC League's visual novel, there are many differences between them that you don't really know which one is the true version of the story. But back to talking about visual novels, the Star Guardian event did fight scenes a little bit better with CGs or illustrations on important moments to better flesh out and illustrate the actions that are happening during those moments. Spirit Blossom still did it best though. They didn't have CGs and illustrations because the story and dating sim elements didn't have many big action moments, so everything really fits in pretty well. So now it begs the question, what should Riot do moving forward? What can they do to expand the ways that they can present their stories? Should they completely ditch the visual novel method? Should they just get rid of it and try something new? Well, they can keep it if the story is appropriate for it, but I think they should begin to explore other methods to tell their stories to not be restricted by the limitations of the visual novel structure. Take for example the Bilgewater event way back in 2015. It used a text story within the client. Yes, the old client. The structure of the text is basically something you can find in the Universe website right now, and once you finish reading it, you get an icon at the very end. By using this method, you can have the writer describe the scene in any way they want. Lucian's firing while jumping on a cliff, riding on a horse, and whatever, like, yeah, he can write it down and people can leave it up to their imaginations. If it's too boring, Riot can include artworks and illustrations to picture important moments, just like the CG usages in the visual novels. This has been done before in some of the text stories in the universe, and I think it works. And the reason why I think doing it like this is better than using CG illustrations within visual novels is that sometimes we just want high fantasy moments to be left to the imagination. For me, when I experienced the Sentinels of Light event, the visual novel elements were a little bit too distracting for me to enjoy the story and imagine it for myself. If I were to read it as a universe story with some music in the background provided by Riot, I think that would enhance the experience a lot more for me compared to the visual novel that I got within the event last year. There are obviously other methods that you can use to storytell, like comics, puzzles, and many more that Riot can explore and try to do on their future events. But those are just some things that come up on the top of my mind. I haven't really scripted much of this, I just wanted to say some things out of my chest after finishing this event, and some of the things that I am not quite satisfied by as of recently from Riot's storytelling, and what I think would be a lot more interesting moving forward in future events. And now I want to ask you guys a question. What do you think would be a good alternative to the visual novel methods that they're using right now for these midsummer large events? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Fade.